Hi and welcome to this DCP Web Blender 2.8 glass shader text beginners tutorial. So in today's tutorial we're going to create something similar to this. We're going to have this glass sort of text here, we've got these particles, and then we've got this volumetric lighting that will cast these nice shadows and this light effect going across the text. So we aim to create something like this, but let's do something better. So let's close this and open up Blender, and we'll click on General here. Then we'll middle mouse click to rotate around so the X and the Y axis are in this shape, just like here you see. And we'll go to File, Save As, and on my desktop I'm already in the folder, so I'm going to call this glass text -01. So call yours glass text -01 and save it. We'll click on the cube and delete it. So hit the delete key, we'll press Shift A, and we're going to insert some text. So here we've got some text. We'll zoom in a little bit with our mouse and just move to the top angle, something like this. And now we need to open up our web browser, and we're going to go to this website called Free Commercial Fonts, right? And we'll minimize this, open up this folder on my desktop, and what we'll do is we need to pick a font. I'm just going to use the very first one. So when you go to the website, I'm going to put a link to this, so I'll make a quick note. And we'll put a link to this in the YouTube description, this website. I'm going to pick this font here. I'm going to click download. You want to pick a font with quite a thick edge. So something like this one here or this one here will be fine. Something like this. Nothing too thin. So we'll drag this into the folder. We'll close down the web browser, right click, and we're going to extract this to a directory. So here's the font. We can delete the zip file and we'll rename this folder to font. Inside there we've got the font, so we'll click here and delete this readme. We just got the font left over. Then we'll go back to Blender. This text is already selected, so we go to the text object data here. We'll go to the font options here and click on this folder. Then we'll go inside here and select this text here, or this font. We'll click open, and you can see the font is here now. We're going to press the tab key, delete this text, and I'm going to type in glass text, but you can type in anything you like. I'm not sure I want to use that font. Let's go back here quickly. Let's have a quick look here. I'm not really liking that font, so there's lots to choose here. I'm going to use this one here, right? So to change that font, we can do that quite easily. We've still got this folder here called font. We don't really need it anymore, so we can delete it. And we'll drag this one here, right click, and we'll extract it. We'll delete the zip file and rename this one to font. Then we can go back to Blender, click on this directory, and we've got this other font here now, this new one. We'll click open, and now it's changed to this font style. I think like the last ones we used this one. In the characters are quite tightly packed together, you can see, so we want to add some character spacing. So we set that to 1.2, and then the size I'm going to set it to around 2.4, something like this. And then in the geometry, this is going to be the extrusion, right? So we want to set this to 0.25, I think. We want the text to be quite thick here. And then in the depth, we set it to 0.02 and the bevel resolution to 2 for the bevel resolution. 0.02 and then 2. Let's go to File, Save, go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin. So that will center it out like this. Then we want to, if we're looking at it from this angle, we want to rotate this text. So click on the text, you know it's been selected because it's highlighted orange like this. Then we want to, let's see, we want to rotate it, right? So press R to rotate, press X to lock it on the X axis, and then type in 90. That will rotate this text around. We'll press number 3 on our keyboard. Number 3 takes us to orthographic view, the right side. We'll click on the move tool, and we're going to zoom in and drag this text so that it is roughly one box here above this green line. Then we can click and rotate. We've got our text here. we're going to press number 7. Number 7 takes us into the top view, and we want to duplicate this text. So we click here, we see this is the text here. We're going to press Shift and D, so your mouse cursor must be in the window here. Press Shift D to duplicate and hit the Enter key. Then you can drag that second copy back behind it. So the first one we're going to call it text gloss, and then the second one we're going to call it text metal. So this second text we want to make it more narrow, so the extrusion we want to set it to like around 0.05, the extrusion, right? So it's much thinner. Then we're going to zoom in and grab that and put it so that it is sitting in between this other text, the wider, bigger one, right? The glass text. So when we rotate around, we'll see that it's embedded inside of this text object. So the next thing we want to do is click on the glass text here, go to Object, go to Convert to a Mesh here. Then we'll click on the metal text and do the same, go to Object, Convert to a Mesh object. So both of them are now mesh objects. And what we'll do is try and get your text somewhere like here, just like this. And then we're going to press Control Alt and 0. Control Alt 0. That moves the camera to this view. So now the camera is pointing at this text. Then we can press we can click on the camera here, go to the object data here, and on the y-axis we'll move it back slightly. We want to rotate it on the x-axis a little bit up, and on the z-axis we want to bring it down, right? So really we're just going to use mainly the x rotation and the y to bring it back, and then the z to move it up and down. So we just want to get this text in here nicely, right? So we'll set it to about here, then click on the camera and then go to the camera settings here, the object data, and we're going to set it to around 40mm around here, right? So that we've got a bigger, wider angle basically, right? So let's go to File, Save, and then we can middle mouse click to come out of the camera view. We can zoom in a little bit here, and the first thing we do is click on the glass text here, and let's go into render view. So we're in render view now here, and we'll click on the glass text, go to the, in fact let's go to look dev view, because that will give us some lighting, right? So we'll look at look dev view here, click on this one, then we can go to the glass text, go to the material, and we'll click new, and then in the principle we'll select glass BD BSDF. So that's going to turn it into pretty much glass text, right? That will be the material applied to it, and then the roughness we can bring that right down to pretty much 0 for now. And we're going to tweak these settings in a moment, yeah? Then in the metal text metal, we're going to create a new material, and we're going to set the metallic all the way up, and the roughness will bring that down, and then we choose a color. I'm going to choose something like blue for now, this sort of blue color. So you can see there's this blue color inside of the text here, right? Then we want to go to the render settings, and we're going to turn on volumetrics for now, and we're going to turn on screen space reflections. We're going to turn off half trace and turn on refractions here. Then set the trace position all the way up to the top. Then click on this glass text here and go to the material, and then turn on screen space refractions here, like this. Now you can see that the text is pretty much see-through, but you've got this metal text embedded inside of it, right, to give it color. And we're going to have some lights going through this and do some different stuff, and we can experiment, right? We can have a little play and see what looks good. That might be a bit too dark, but we need to set up our lighting first to really make judgment on that. So what we'll do is go to the world settings and click use nodes, and then we're going to go to the shading, and inside the shading we're going to select world here. And I'm just going to pan my text around and zoom in a little bit here. You don't really need to do this, but I would suggest you zoom in a bit to see the text clearly. So something like this. Then I'm going to click on the render settings here, so I see the render view. And then in the world settings, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And this background, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to press Shift A. And in the shader, I'm going to insert a, let's see, texture. And I want to insert an environmental texture. Then I'm going to insert a input, which is going to be a, let's see, texture coordinate here. And then I want to insert a vector mapping here. So we've basically got the the texture coordinate generated will connect to the vector here. This vector will connect to this vector here, and then the color will connect to the surface here. And we're going to minimize this. We're going to create a new folder here called HDRI. Then we're going to go to this website called HDRI Haven. I'll make a note to put that in the YouTube description as well. Then you can pick any of these maps you like. You can just go and experiment. I'm going to click on Browse All 200. Let's click this. And then, you know, you've got all these new ones that have just come out, and then you've got some other ones. You can play around with these, right? We'll click more for now. We'll just see them. And you've got all the different styles down here. So click on night, for example. And then we might take this Shanghai one. This one normally works quite well with some of the lighting. So we'll click the 4K. So I've clicked on this 4K and I've downloaded this one here. So we've got one there. Then we need to find some more, right? So let's click on the, let's have a look. Let's go to high contrast, and we'll have this one here, Flower Road. We'll click 4K. So we've got two of them. We're going to probably end up downloading 4 of these. Then we'll have this fireplace one, and we'll click 4K here, and we'll grab one more. So let's do something like sunrise, something like this one here, sunny. Sounds good. Let's grab that one. So we've got these 4 here. We'll drag and drop them into this directory that we called HDRI. So let's drag and drop them all here. We've got 4 of them in here. We can minimize the browser, go back to Blender. We've got this environmental texture set up. So we'll click open here, and we can go to the HDRI folder and click on fireplace first. And we'll click open. Now you can see what that's going to do to the text, right? Now sometimes if we rotate this a little bit up here and then press 0, we can see what the camera is going to see now. You can see it's pretty dark, right? So we can rotate this text around. We can see what it's going to look like, change the lighting. So although we're rotating this HDRI image, we won't really see this in the background. We're going to cover all of that up. This is looking pretty dark, right? It's not really illuminating this text very well for this particular font and style. That might be down to the text inside, that blue text, but we'll rotate this around this way a little bit, and I don't think this one's going to work too well for us. So let's open the Shanghai one. Now you can see the blues and all the nice colors coming through, and I reckon this is going to work a lot better. Let's set this X, the Y and the Z to 0 for now. So set all these coordinates to 0. We'll check a few more. So let's try the Flower Road one. So we can see the text in here. We can move this and see what sort of lighting we're going to get off of this one. And it might be this dark blue text inside that's really not too great. So we click on text metal here, this one, go to the material here. You can see it's quite dark, this blue text. So we can lighten that up. Let's make it sort of maybe like a lighter blue color, and let's try and change its roughness. Now we want to leave the roughness down, and we want to leave the metallic quite high. So yeah, I think that's going to be okay. And again, we can play around with this a little bit later, just to experiment with. So let's open up, I think this is the last one. Where is it? Flower, sunny Shanghai. I think we just did this one, right? Okay, this is this one. So I reckon it's out of this one here or the Shanghai one that we're going to get like some nice lighting from it. Let's try this one again. And I think we're going to stick with this one, the Shanghai one, right? So we'll set this Z-axis to 0 for the minute. Let's just rotate around and find something that looks pretty cool with the colors. So we're going to play around with this in a minute. So we'll leave it here at this position. It's set to like 91 degrees. Let's just set it to 91 for the minute. And then we're going to experiment with this afterwards. And we're going to do some more work. So let's go back to layout. And here in layout, we can now go to the render view. Now we can see this text inside of here. The first thing we want to do really is press number 7. In fact, we can just do it from here. So we can press Shift A and we insert a plane. So we can see this little plane here. Let's press S to scale it and scale it so that it's wider than what the camera can see, right? But we want it to be, let's see. We want it to be something like, we'll have to experiment with this a little bit. Something like here, but we want to bring it forward. So let's click on this plane here, go to the object data, and then on the location y-axis we want to bring it forward. We almost want this back line here to be cutting through the text. We don't want it to be like too far back. Something like this would be good. Again, we can try and experiment with that a little bit later. We will then press Ctrl S to save. So let's go to File, Save As. Let's save this as version 2 for now. Then we want to basically get rid of this background, right? We don't really want to see this in the actual animation. So what we'll do is press Shift A and insert a UV sphere. Then we're going to press S to scale, and we're going to scale that out. And as we keep scaling, eventually what will happen as we keep scaling, if I middle mouse click, the camera will be inside of this ball like this, right? So we press 0, you want your camera inside. The best way to really check that is to go to, if you just middle mouse click to rotate it a little bit, press number 7, you'll see it from the top, then go to the solid view and then go to transparency. And then also in shading, you can set it to, let's see, random. Then you can really see what's going on quite clear. You can see the cameras here, that's our text, this is the ball, and then this is the floor, right? Like this. So let's go back into the render view. We'll press 0, that takes us inside. And really the first thing I want to do is go to the camera, and on the, let's see, on the Z-axis we can set it to 0. So let's change that rotation a little bit. And then on the X-axis we just want to move it across so it's nicely centered here, right? We can click on the floor, click on this floor, and then go, which is the plane. So let's call this floor. We'll click on that, give it a material, and we will click new. For now, we'll go to the sphere and also give that a material, click new. Then the color I'm going to set to black, and then the roughness I'm going to bring that all the way to the top, and the specular I'm going to turn it all the way off. So it's basically a black background now, right? Then we will click on this floor, and we want to give that, we want to bring down the roughness. We want to actually, let's see, let's go to the render settings here. We want to turn on bloom, and this light source here, we want to right click and delete it. Get rid of that light source. Then this floor here, let's go to its material. So click on the floor, go to its material, click on that and set it to black as well. Then let's have a look here. Let's press 0, and the floor roughness, we can adjust that. So we want some of the reflection here, but we don't want it to be too strong. If you make it too strong, then you're going to see like the buildings and stuff, and it's not going to look very good. So we want to make the roughness about here. I'm setting mine to 0.164. Then we will go to the shading here, and on the Z axis we're going to rotate it till we get a nice color scheme going, right? So maybe this is ready for you to experiment. You can keep rotating it around. All you're doing is really twisting this HDRI map, right? I reckon it's like this sort of colors here look really good for me. So if we go back to layer, you can see what it's going to look like. Let's go to file, save, and now you can really pick that metal color. So when you click on metal text here, right now it's set to blue. You can pick any sort of color you want. So maybe we'll go for like quite a contrast, right? Or you can pick similar colors. This is ready for you to experiment now. You can just rotate around here and pick whatever color you like. Maybe I'll go for like a sort of red color, and then we'll press F12 to render. We can see what that looks like now, right? So that's looking pretty cool. I quite like that. You can also, let's see. So if we hide the metal text, really this text is actually transparent. So we could, in theory, let's see, what we could do is click on the metal text, go to the object data, and if we move that back, it's probably better to do this from top angle. So we're to look at it from the top. This main text, the glass text, is actually glass, right? So this text is sitting inside of it. So if we were to move its location on the y-axis, we could bring it back behind, almost like it's sitting behind this glass text, and you'll get like this sort of effect. So let's press 0. The text will almost be like see-through, so when we render it, it will be almost like ice in front of it, or like real glass, right? So you can experiment the position of that metal text where you want it to be positioned, and you can bring it forwards and backwards. That's going to really affect the render. You don't want it at the front because you want to get some of that glass effect sort of in between, right? So maybe I'll leave it towards the back edge here. Let's see, around here. Then you can also click on the metal text, go to the material, and you can change it to like an emission shader. Then that text is actually emitting light. You can bring that down or raise it up or do whatever you want. And then you can go and experiment with the different materials and see what looks good for you. So you can just play around, experiment with it. That's what it's all about, right, Blender? Play around with it, see what it does, and then you can pick what you like. I'm just going to go back to the principled shader here, and then we'll set it back to metallic, and we'll set the color to something like, what was it, red before, right? Red here. Something like this. Let's press 0 so we can see what the camera sees. Let's go to the render settings here, and then in the bloom, we should be able to increase the intensity a bit. Just something like this, then we get these nice little glow effects on there. I'm not convinced with that metal color, so let's go back here. And you can reduce the roughness or increase it, it's up to you. You can play around with these settings. I'll leave you to experiment with that. But the color, I think I'm going to go for like a more of a purple, dark purple color like this. Let's press F12 to render it, and we can see what that looks like now. So the next thing we want to do is go to File, Save, and we're going to, let's see, we're going to press Shift A, and we'll insert a light spotlight, or is it an area light we want? Let's do a spotlight, and we'll drag that up. Right now that light is shining downwards, right? So if we middle mouse click and rotate, then press, let's move it behind the text here. It's pointing downwards, so we'll press R, then X, and then we want to rotate it towards the text. Let's rotate it. We almost want it to be pointing slightly upwards, like this, like an angle like this. Then we can bring that down. Let's just rotate it around. We can see roughly where it is, right? You can see this text is going to flow across the floor like this. We could probably bring it up a little bit. It's like in the middle of this text here. So let's leave it in the middle position. Let's press 0 to see the camera. Then we want to change its color, and we want to probably make this like a purple color, so it's similar to we can have blue maybe, I don't know. Let's leave it on purple for a minute. And I think this camera, we want to rotate it down a little bit. So click on the camera, go to the object data, and then on the X setting we want to rotate it almost upwards, but then bring it down on the Z axis, so it's looking much closer to the ground towards this text. We'll go to File, Save, and then we'll go to the shading here, and we need to now press Shift A and insert a shader volumetric scatter here, and connect that to the volume here, and then set the density to 0.008, and then we can change this setting here to give us that glow, that type of glow effect. And then we can click on the spotlight here and change its energy to reduce that or increase it. Really, inside the render settings here, underneath volumetric, we should set the tile size to, let's set it to 4. You can set it to 2 or 4, depends on your machine, and we'll set the samples to around 120, and we'll turn on volumetric shadows, and we'll set those samples to around 100 as well, something like this. Then if we go back to our layout, let's see, don't think that color is helping us, right? So click on the spotlight, go to its color, and we can change that to maybe like a blue or something. Let's see what will work well. Maybe we'll leave it purple for now. Let's go to the layout and then click on the floor. And let's go to this floor material. Let's see if we can improve that a bit. And with the light, if we click on the spotlight and move it to somewhere, let's see. I'm going to move it to around here so I can see what sort of effect it's having here, and I want to increase the size of it. Let's see, not the size, the radius. Then click on the floor. Pretty sure we can improve this a bit. Let's click on that spotlight and let's move it across the screen. You can see it's casting shadows and the light is flowing through. This is like this volumetric lighting that we've done here, right? You can imagine that it's going to flow across the screen like this. I think it'll look pretty good. So we're almost done really. Let's just save this. I think it just needs to come up a bit more. Let's press F12 and render it. So we'll render at 1 frame. Now we can kind of get an idea what that's going to look like. Then we'll go to File, Save As. Let's save this as version 3. Save it. Now, we wanted to add some particles, right? Not have to do this, but let's just do it anyway because I did it in that last video. So what we'll do, I think we'll change the style of those particles as well a bit. So let's press Shift A and insert a plane. And that plane we want to scale it on the x-axis, so it's as wide as this text basically. So we'll press S and then X, and then we want to scale it out so that it's maybe a little bit slightly wider than this text. So we want it to be, yeah, you can see that the plane is a little bit wider. So we'll press 0 to go back into the render view or the camera view. We'll press Shift A and insert a UV sphere. So this is the UV sphere. Let's drag this up so we can see it a bit clearer up here. We'll press S to scale and scale it down to around this size, quite small, which is 0.124. So let's make it 0.1, and we'll set this to 0.1, and we'll set the Z to 0.1 in the object data for this UV sphere, this one. Let's see this one here. We'll double click, it's called sphere 001. Let's call it particle. And then we'll click on that and go to the material and click new material. And then we want to set that to an emission shader. And we're going to choose like a dark purple color, like a different color slightly to this text and this light. So let's just turn off the overlays and we can see that purple color there. Then we can increase its strength to maybe 3, something like 3. In fact, that's a bit too much. Let's set it to around 2. Then let's turn back on the overlays. Let's click on the, let's see, the plane here. This is the particle emitter. So this will be the particle emitter. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Click on the particle emitter, click on the particle settings here, click new. Then we're going to leave it at 1000. We'll leave all the settings as they are for the minute. The velocity, we'll set that to 0. The force field weights here, we'll set the gravity to 0 for the minute. Then the render, inside render, we'll select object. And then this object here, we'll click on the particle that we created just now. These little pink purple particles, and then we'll turn off the turn off the emitter here, set the randomness all the way up to the top. Then we're going to press Shift A and insert a wind object. That wind is already pointing in the upwards direction. Then we're going to press Shift A and insert a turbulence as well. So this one here is the wind, so it's called field and we call it wind, and the other one is called field turbulence. So let's click on the field wind and we'll set the strength to around 2, and then the turbulence we're going to set that to around 3. Then we'll click back on the particle emitter here and go to the particle settings, and inside of the where is it gone? The physics, we'll set the Brownian to around 4. So to see all this working, let's click play, and we should see these little particles floating up, right? You can just about see them, they're too small. So let's pause this and let's press F12 to render it. And let's see if we can even see them. I reckon they're a bit too small. You can just about see them here, these little dots, right? So we want them to be a bit bigger. So we'll click on the particle emitter and we'll go to the render settings and we'll scale them up to around, let's see, let's set them to around 0.9. Let's press F12 now. And now we can see them a lot clearer, right? these particles, really this text. So the glass text and the metal text, I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to zoom in a bit here, and I want to drag them down. Let's see, let's drag it down. Let's press number 3. If we press number 3 on our keyboard, we need to hide the sphere here, this one. That's our background, right? This sphere here, that circle that we put everything around. And if we zoom right in with the glass and metal text selected, we want to have it just slightly above the floor. So that green line is going to be like the floor. This particle emitter, we need to move it up a bit. So let's turn back on the sphere, press 0 on our keyboard to get into camera view. And this particle emitter, we want to move it up. So let's click on the particle emitter and let's drag it up a little bit. So around here, this point, we'll press save, Control S. Then in the particle settings for the particle emitter, let's scroll down to the, where is it? The render, not the render, the viewport here. And we'll turn off the emitter so we don't see that. Then we can turn off the overlays for the minute. Go back to the first frame and click play. Then we see these particles rising up like this. So that should be okay. I think that's cool. Let's go back to the first frame. Let's turn back on our overlays. So we turn back on the overlays. We'll click on the particle here. We'll zoom out and drag it so that it's above the camera, so we don't see that one particle. We don't want to see that. Then let's click on the, where is it? Let's click on the spotlight here, and we're going to drag this all the way off camera view here. So the camera can't really see that light anymore. We'll hit the record button, and on the first frame, we'll go to the spotlight and its object data, and we're going to press the letter I over the location keyframe. So press I here, that will insert a keyframe for the location here. We'll move all the way down to frame 240, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. So we'll take this text, this light, and we'll simply click on the red arrow and drag it all the way across the screen so that it goes out to the other side here. Then we'll untick the record button, and that will be our light moving across this text here now, right? Like this. Then on around this frame here, frame 40, let's call it frame 40. On this frame, and then on the frame, let's say frame 40, let's go to the particle emitter here, and we'll go to the particle settings, and the start frame, we want to set it to frame 40. So no particles will be emitted until frame 40. The end frame is set to 200, and we want to set that to, let's see, our last frame is going to be 200, and we can leave it at 250 actually. Now let's set it to 250 is fine. So our last frame is going to be on 250. So we want the particles to stop emitting around the last 50 seconds, right? Let me get some calculator out here. So we've got 250 frames, and the lifetime of the particle is 50, so that leaves us on 200. So that should be okay, I think. We want to end it a bit quicker than that, right? So we want to set the end frame here to around 170. So the particles will stop emitting on this frame here. That will be the last one. Well, they'll actually stop on 170, but they last up to 50 frames lifetime, right? So if we go back and click play, the light will start to come in, and as it gets closer to the text, the particles will start to emit. And as it gets across to the other side of the screen, those particles will start to fade out as it gets to look towards the last frames. Let's go to File Save, and what we want to do is go to frame 40 here, click the record button, then go to the particle size, right? So where is that? That's in the render. So inside render, on the scale, we're going to move our mouse over here and press the letter I. That inserts a keyframe for the scale, and we're going to move all the way down. Make sure record button is ticked. We're going to move all the way down to frame 221, frame 221, and then hit the letter I on this keyframe here as well, and we're going to scale it down to 0.0. In fact, we'll just type in 0. Just type in 0, then it'll be tiny. That way, as these particles are being emitted, as it gets closer to the end frames, they're going to fade out because they're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until they get to 0 size. Well, next to nothing basically. So let's cancel that. Let's go to File, Save As, and save it as version 4. Now, the last thing we want to do is go to the first frame and hit the record button. Then we're going to go to the shading here. And inside the shading on this Z-axis, we're going to press the letter I. That inserts a keyframe for the rotation here. We're going to go back to the layout and go all the way down to frame 250. And then go back to the shading here and hit the letter I again. And this time we're going to adjust it. So it's minus 67.1. And you want to move this not too much. So you want to move it like no more than like 30 degrees. So we're going to say, you can either go 30 degrees plus or minus. So if we set, what is it, 67, so around 37. Let's see, around 37 or 67, around 107. Let's see. I reckon around here is going to be good, 107. So if we go back to the layout, untick the record button, and scrub backwards, we're going to see like the lighting passing across this text. Might be a little bit hard to see with the overlay, but this text is going to like shine and do all this good stuff right here. So let's move to like a frame like this sort of frame, and we'll go to here and we'll go to the bloom settings. We can adjust the radius. We might bring the radius down but intensify it more, right? Let's try and bring that intensity up. Let's try and raise the threshold, bring the threshold down a bit. You've got to really experiment and try and get the bloom to what you like. We'll go to the output here and set it to 60 frames. Depends, if you want to run it at 30 frames you can, but you wouldn't really need that many frames. I'm running at 250 frames at 30 frames a second. So we'll end up with what? 250 divided by 30 gives us 8.3 seconds duration in the animation. So let's give it a quick play. And this will be running at 30 frames a second. 60, sorry. The final one will anyway. Right now it's probably not running that fast. So I think that's going to be good. The last thing I want to do is hit the record button. Let's go to File, Save As, and we're going to save this as version 5. Save it. Then I'm going to click on the camera, and in the object data I'm going to click I for the location frames and I for the rotation as well. So move your mouse cursor over here and hit the letter I on the location section and on the rotation as well. So on the first frame, Blender kind of knows what it's doing, and this is probably what the end frame is going to be, right? So around 2, we don't want to do it too far, so around 2, let's say 240 here, we're going to press the letter I and the letter I here as well. Then we're going to move back to the first frame, and now we can move the camera. So we can move the camera backwards a bit, not too far. If you move it too far, you're going to be outside of the sphere, which is covering the background. So I'm going to move it forward until I can see the text again. So let's just adjust it. You can use these little arrows on the side to adjust it on the fractions. Let's move it back a bit more until it goes black. When it goes black, you know you're too far out. The camera's outside outside of the sphere. So we'll move it back in a little bit. And for me, it's around 21 here, right? That's quite good for me. And then on the Z-axis I want to move it up slightly, and you can see it's hitting the sphere again. So let's move it forward a little bit more to around here. So now the camera will move in slowly at an angle coming down towards this text. And I don't really want too much going on with this camera. I want to keep it quite simple. Let's untick the record button, go to File, Save. Let's press F12 to render it. We can see what that's going to look like. Now you can go away and experiment. You can change the color of these particles. You can change the color of the metal text inside. You can change the color of the light. You can set it up to exactly how you want it to be. You can go and experiment with that. Play around with the settings. Play around with the roughness on this floor. So if we click display and then click on the floor. Let's click on this floor here and go to its material. Here you can play around with the settings and change the specular, but you want quite a lot of shine here, right? We might even just whack that and set that all the way up to 1 and then change the roughness. So if you set the roughness quite high up, then you're just going to get like the light, mainly just the light coming through on the animation. But really we want to get a lot of that reflection in there, right? But not too much. We just want to be able to see what that text looks like here. And I think that's going to look pretty good. And then the other setting we can play around with is go into the shading here and then go back into the world settings. We are in the world settings. On this density, you've got to be really careful with this, right? You have to really set this to a low number. If you increase it just by 1, you can see 0.1.08 has that sort of effect to it. If we go to 0.008, you can see it looks pretty good. So if you want to play around with this, you can set this number to like 4, then it will be not as strong, the color. Or you can set it to something like maybe 12. It's going to be pretty low, that's too low, so not 12. Let's see, 0.089. So then it will be 0.010. So quite low numbers in here is what you want, nothing too high. The I can't even pronounce that. This thing here, you can play around with as well to affect the lighting. So experiment with that. I'm going to leave mine quite high, but you don't want to set it too high and you don't want to set it too low. So you've got to just get it right the way that you like it. Something like that for me. Let's just give it one quick play. And I think that's going to be good. I'm going to go to File, Save. I'll go into the output. Let's go back to the first frame. We're going to leave it at 1080p to all 250 frames, 60 frames a second. And let's just check in here. Everything's good. Volumetrics is all good. You can set it to 2. 2 will give you better volumetric lighting. The lower this number, basically the crappier the lighting is going to look here. So it just won't look as great. As soon as you start setting it up to like 4, the clarity of that lighting is going to be much better. 2 is quite high. Normally I set it to 4 because my computer struggles a bit with 2, so I leave it at 4. Volumetric shadows is fine. All of this is good. This should be fine. Distribution, right? There's not much you want to change here, but the end clipping, you can change how much of this light gets actually pushed across the screen. Normally I leave this at default 100, and I think we're going to be pretty good here. So I'm going to go to the first frame, File, Save. We'll go to the render output. We'll set it to AVI JPEG. We'll go to the folder, go to the desktop, go into this folder here, click accept, and then we'll press Control and F12, and our Blender will go and render out all of them frames. That's going to take a bit of time, so I'll pause the video and we'll come back and check it out. once it's done. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all of the frames. We're on frame 250, you see here. We'll go to File, and we'll go to File, Save As, or just Save. We'll minimize this and see what the final render looks like. We'll open that up, and here we can see the light flowing across with the particles coming up. And we'll also, if we do this a bit slower, let's scrub across it. We'll also see the HDRI lighting. You can see around the edges here how it's affecting the bloom and the glow and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much a basic glass shader animation text. We've got the reflections on the floor, and then we've got this lighting going on. The one thing I would say, if I was to improve this, is that when I click play, the particle speed is way too fast. So to fix that, what you would do is go back to Blender, go to the let's see, the field wind, and in the wind settings here, reduce the strength, set it to like 0.5, something like that. If we click back and play it, we should see the particles move a lot slower, and that would have probably looked a lot better, right? Or maybe you can increase that a little bit, maybe to 1, and they'll flow up a little bit higher, and I think that would have looked a lot better. So the only real thing I would have fixed on this animation, if I was to improve it, is just go to the wind field and set the strength to 1, and then I think you're good to go. You can rebake this, re-render it, and you're good to go. So let's close this. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.